All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're stepping into the role of clinical detectives. We're going to solve a radical mystery by piecing together the final, critical hours of a patient's life. And you'll see how every single detail, no matter how small, really matters. This is really the heart of it all, isn't it? We're not just looking at charts and lab values. We're trying to find the story hidden within the data. So get ready, because we are going to solve this equation together. So picture this. It's the dead of night in a quiet hospital room. A patient who's being treated for a specific type of lung cancer, ROS1 positive, with a targeted therapy called taletrectinib, suddenly goes into cardiac arrest. The team rushes in, they do everything right, but it's just too late. And then there's silence. The team is left standing there with this one heavy question just hanging in the air. What did we miss? That's where our investigation really begins. Okay, so this is where you come in. You're the clinical pharmacist on the case, and your expertise is absolutely critical right now. The first few pieces of evidence start rolling in, and honestly, at first glance, they don't really add up. The first thing you check are the drug levels. The lab results for taletrectinib are back, and the level is, well, it's high, sure, but it's stuck in this confusing gray area they're calling upper normal. It's definitely not high enough to be a clear-cut, straightforward overdose. So this isn't our smoking gun, at least not on its own. But then you see this. And this is interesting. The patient's electrolytes are way off balance. Potassium is down to 3.1, magnesium is at 1.5. Now, to a layperson, these might seem like tiny little deviations, right? But when you're talking about the heart's electrical wiring, this is a huge vulnerability. It makes the entire system incredibly fragile. As the team starts asking questions, piecing together the day, a seemingly random detail pops up. A nurse mentions the patient had this pink bottle with them, filled with some kind of homemade citrus juice. Nobody knows exactly what was in it. Is this a crucial piece of the puzzle, or is it just noise?
Now, in any good mystery, there's always a suspect that looks a little too perfect. And as you're digging through the electronic medical record, you find one. A big one. An order for a drug called ketoconazole.
And this seems like a slam dunk. Ketoconazole is a famous, powerful inhibitor of the CYP3A4 enzyme. That's the exact enzyme that breaks down taletrectinib. It would perfectly explain the high drug levels. Case closed, right? Well, not so fast. The theory completely falls apart under scrutiny. Turns out, the order was canceled in less than 5 minutes. It was never given, and a lab analysis confirms it. Zero trace of ketoconazole in the patient's system. We were chasing a ghost. It was a total red herring. Okay, so with our main suspect cleared, the investigation has to pivot. The real answer, it turns out, isn't from big, dramatic bad guy. Instead, it's a conspiracy of small, overlooked details that were hiding in plain sight the entire time. Let's see how this really went down. And here they are, the real culprits. First, the patient got 2 doses of ondansetron, which is a super common anti-nausea drug. Second, a system alert, a warning about a potential heart rhythm risk, had been flagged as low priority, so it basically got ignored. And third, the lab results from that mysterious citrus juice come back, and it's positive for a compound called 6.7's dihydrobergamotin. You can just call it DHB. So what on earth is DHB? It's part of a family of compounds called furanocoumarins. You find these in things like grapefruit and bergamot oranges. And guess what they do? They are potent inhibitors of that exact same CYP3A4 enzyme we were talking about before. By drinking that juice, the patient unknowingly slammed the brakes on the very metabolic highway their body needed to clear the taletrectinib. And now all the pieces start clicking into place. This wasn't a single point of failure. It was a cascade. It was the definition of a perfect storm, where a handful of seemingly minor things all aligned at precisely the wrong moment to create an absolute catastrophe.
And this timeline, this is just chilling. Look at the timing. At 7:25 a.m., the patient drinks the juice, blocking the enzyme. Just 35 minutes later, at 8 a.m., they take their dose of taletrectinib. Then, a couple hours after that, they're given ondansetron, another drug that can affect the heart's rhythm. And boom, just about 3 hours later, the QT interval on the heart monitor spikes dangerously. It's a perfect, tragic roadmap of the disaster. So let's just walk through this deadly chain reaction. Step 1, the citrus juice shuts down the enzyme. Step 2, taletrectinib levels have nowhere to go but up, creeping into the danger zone.
Step 3, the low potassium and magnesium had already made the heart's electrical system wobbly and vulnerable. Step 4, ondansetron comes in and adds even more stress to that system. And the final step, all of that triggers torsades de pointes, a chaotic, fatal heart rhythm. Each step just made the next one worse.
So the final diagnosis, the ultimate cause of death, isn't a simple drug overdose. It's called multifactorial synergy. It means that no single one of these things would have been enough to kill the patient. Not the juice, not the electrolytes, not the ondansetron. But together they created a lethal combination that was far, far more dangerous than the sum of its parts. You know, every patient's death is a profound tragedy, but the silence that follows can teach us so much if we're willing to listen. So what can we learn from this? What are the lessons that we have to carry forward to prevent this from ever happening again? Okay, here are the big ones. First, electrolytes are medicine. They're not just numbers on a lab report. Tiny drifts can be fatal. Second, never, ever underestimate citrus, especially grapefruit. Think of it as a toxicity multiplier. Third, supportive care drugs are not harmless bystanders. They have real risks. Fourth, how we design our alert systems in our EMRs really matters. A low-priority label can be a death sentence. And finally, as pharmacists, as clinicians, we have to be timeline detectives. The when is often just as important as the what.
This single quote from the investigation just says it all, doesn't it? It wasn't the taletrectinib itself that was the killer. It was the timing. It was this perfect, catastrophic storm that brewed and broke within a tiny 3-hour window.
And that's where we'll leave this. The final, most important lesson is that the deadliest threats often come from the most ordinary things. A simple glass of juice, an alert that everyone ignores, a small dip in electrolytes. The real challenge for all of us is to see the potential for a storm brewing in these quiet, everyday details. So the question for you is, what will you be looking for?